And now I'm mainly going to concentrate on this double belted spinning wheel, and I'm going to show you all the issues involved in that, starting out with the flyer. When you take the bobbin off of this double belted spinning wheel, it's fairly simple. You simply loosen up the tension knob. Now this spinning wheel does not have the lock nut on the bottom of the mother of all, so all you have to do is loosen up the tension knob, which brings this whole assembly forward. And on this particular spinning wheel, you hold on to the flyer. Actually, you push the flyer that way a bit, and then this, the front maiden, simply pivots, and then you pull the flyer out like that. And you got to try to keep the belts from getting tangled up. But as you see, the flyer, the axle on the flyer simply goes through this little leather loop that they have back here, and this is actually a leather loop here, and those are places where you should put some lubricant over time. So with a flyer such as this, where you have a whirl that has the left-handed thread which keeps it tight on the flyer axle, you can only spin the spinning wheel and the flyer in the clockwise direction, which keeps the whirl tight on the flyer. You can't spin the spinning wheel in the opposite direction like on my other spinning wheel, which I have a whirl that is semi-permanently attached to the flyer axle. My whirl on the other spinning wheel can go in either direction, doesn't matter. That's the way I designed it. But this whirl, like I say, can only go clockwise, which keeps it tight on the flyer axle. If you were to spin it in the opposite direction, the whirl is simply going to loosen up and run it. It's going to hit the maiden that supports the flyer. So you can only go this way. This is a left-handed whirl, so to take the bobbin off, you have to spin it as though you were tightening a jar lid. You have to spin it clockwise as you're looking down on it here. Then the whirl comes off, and then the bobbin, which free floats on that flyer axle, comes off. So it's just that simple. And put the whirl back on, spinning it counterclockwise this time. Most double-belted wheels, such as this one, use one long belt which folds back on itself, which I'll show you in a moment, an example of how that lengthy belt is folded back on itself. Most spinning wheels use one long belt, and it actually looks like two belts when you first look at it, but in reality it's one long belt. But on this particular spinning wheel, when I got it, it had just this single older belt on it. So I assume that someone must have never have had a single long belt on here. They had two individual shorter belts like you see here, because now I added this new belt, and I figured, well, why waste the leather roping? I'll just make another single belt for this particular wheel. The trick with putting two individual belts on a wheel such as this, though, is you can't just cut two belts of the same length and throw them on here, because the pulley on the bobbin is smaller than the whirl pulley. So this newer belt that I put on is actually a little bit smaller than this older belt. But basically what I do when I installed this new belt is I simply did a pressure test, kind of like if any of you have put a belt onto the engine of a car. When you install a belt, you do basically a pressure test by pushing down on the belt. And here I'm pushing down about 1.25 inches, and if I assert the equal pressure onto this one, I also get 1.25 inches. So that's how I judge that the two belts are content in being approximately the same tautness on this wheel. Here's a quick little note on how to tie together this 4mm wide belting. What you do is you can probably use paper clip steel of all things. Get yourself a large paper clip. You'll need needle nose pliers with a cutter on it and a good narrow steel awl to punch your hole through your leather roping. What I did was I let this leather soak overnight in oil, because that allows the punch to go through more easily without ripping the leather, and it keeps the leather healthier. And as I said, this is approximately, it's a little less than a millimeter, about a 32nd of an inch steel. And paperclip steel is pretty nice because it can bend without breaking. And because it can bend without breaking, that means it's a softer steel, which will last a fairly long time. So basically what I do is I just start out by bending over part of the steel approximately a quarter of an inch, and I already punched a hole through one end of this. This is just an example piece of leather here I have. Obviously it's not the world's smallest spinning wheel belt, but so here you can just push that part through just like that. So you want approximately maybe 3/16 of an inch, maybe even a quarter of an inch into the belt. And what I do is actually you can push the pin through first and then bend it over, but basically you put one bend in it, and then you'll need another bend, of course, to come back around. And I don't really, it might almost be better off to use two needle nose pliers, so that way you don't put any stress on the leather. So here I'm going to try it with two needle nose pliers and just bend it back on itself like that. Fighting that a little bit. So there you go. So that's one side of the leather basically done, and you can go ahead and pinch that against the leather right away. Don't pinch it too snug. You don't need it overly snug. So there, that's it on that end. And then what I'm going to do right away is I'm going to bend this side up. So that's where the next piece will go on. And you need a chunk of wood here. Don't go doing this on a desk or something, but just a sacrificial piece of wood. And then here, obviously you want to go straight through the leather, and you got to apply a fair amount of body pressure into there. But see, now if I had done that with dry leather, it probably would have damaged the leather. But see, that's a fairly nice healthy hole going through the middle of this 4mm wide leather belting. And like I said, soaking in oil overnight really does the trick. It really helps keep the leather healthy. Yeah, that should be a good match. Now here again, I'm keeping the leather perpendicular with that metal pin. And this little bend here is probably the trickiest one, because this one's got to be, it's got to be tight. I don't want to be have too big of a bend. But now I'm going to spin into the leather parallel. Whoops. Yeah, the metal's going to be a little bit too long, so I'm actually going to snip off a chunk of that metal there. And then push it down. Here you see what this is an example that's showing you in the miniature world how a single long belt would be installed on a double belted spinning wheel. You can see how the belt crosses over in the back there, and it's just a single long belt that goes around the bobbin and the whirl, and twice, it goes twice around the main wheel, as you see. But that's how it works, and it crosses over in the back, like I said. But the advantage to using a single long belt is when you tension the tension knob on the back of the mother of all, it brings equal pressure onto the bobbin and the whirl off of the main wheel. So that's the advantage of using a single long belt over two individual belts on a double belted wheel.